Hey, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm getting this question very often during my live streams. Hey, I'm playing a sorceress now. Will I enjoy the summoner? I'm a berserker. Will a summoner be hard for me to learn, etc.? So with today's video, I thought I would show you both of the summoner builds, talk about them, compare them to each other. Animation logs, is it expensive or cheap? Will you get accepted into groups? Is it a high DPS or not? And generally talk about the gameplay and show you how each of the builds looks like, so that hopefully by the end of the video you will have a much better time sort of deciding which way you want to go with your summoner, either as an alt or as a main. So the specialization build is obviously based on the specialization stat, and at its core is the senior summoner or the master summoner class engraving, which increases the potency of your ancient skills right here. Summoner has an innate that you can juggle in between several ancient skills. These are skills that you either place down on the ground like this one, or skills that you just basically cast like this one without placing any telegraphs, right? Now, these skills are enhanced by the class engraving, but also by the specialization stat. So you're going to want as high specialization stat as possible. Juggling in between other ancient skills is something that you might do in PvP content, where, for example, an enemy is close and you might want to knock them down and then they move away and you might want to catch them with a very long-range Phoenix skill. So this is when you would sort of swap in between them. In terms of PvE content, you're safe with Akir. In terms of gameplay, a specialization summoner is actually not as clunky as you might imagine it to be. There's other classes in the game which take more time to do their things. If you take a look at the skills that we have here, we have this one which you just cast and it's over. You have this one you cast and you can move. This is just a self buff that lasts for as long as the cooldown has a duration. That was a water spirit. This is my personal flavor, a shield, for example. This is a skill that holds you in place for a little bit, and then you have one cast, and then you have a secondary cast. Now, for a class that plays a full specialization build, to sort of have just 1, 2, 3 skills, out of which 2 are casts and 1 holds you down for longer out of 8, I would say that's pretty interesting. As for your regular skills, the basic idea is that you buff yourself, you do big damage. You buff yourself, you do big damage. This is a self-buff skill that increases your attack power by a lot, and this one does exactly the same thing, only a different skill. So you would have to juggle in between these 2 skills before or during the cast of a big damage skill. Let me show you an example of what a DPS window looks like on a specialization summoner. The idea and the goal, the greater goal, would be to use 2 Akirs in 1 DPS window. So we're going to start with 0 ancient energy, fill it up, use 1 Akir while being buffed with Lily's attack power buff, then use an ancient spear during the same buff, after which we're going to fill up another set of ancient energy and use another Akir with the buff from the sticky swamp moss because it comes off cooldown. Shreddy first, and then sticky swamp moss, water spirit. We're going to cast the electric storm, and then the shatter earth, Rayen's shield, cast the first Akir, throw out the lily, and then quickly cast the ancient spear. Cooldown for the water spirit is over, and then we cast it. It fills up a full bar, buff ourselves with sticky swamp moss, and cast the second Akir right here. So this is sort of ideal if you get a good moment of opportunity. To be honest with you, the specialization rotation is pretty forgiving. Nobody's forcing you to actually stand still there and have a 2 Akir rotation every time you have a rotation, so you're most likely going to get used to it really fast, and you're going to have a great time playing the build and the rotation. You can also take it easier based on boss mechanics. You're going to buff yourself, cast the water spirit here, get out of harm's way, and do the electric storm here, followed up quickly by the shatter earth. But you don't want to overgain ancient energy, right? So if you cannot use Akir, you're just going to use an Alimage and then just wait until a better pattern when it's safe to use a water spirit, a shield, and now pull the trigger on the Akir and the ancient spear during the same buff window, right? This depends on the boss patterns, which we all know in Lost Ark. They're sort of random, and it's okay to use skills as efficiently as possible, but at the same time, if mechanics don't allow you to, Summoner is one of those classes which you can hold back on pulling the trigger if there is no possibility for you to pull it, and it's still going to be fine at the end of the day. So now that you have seen the skills and how a rotation sort of looks like, I would like to tell you that kickstarting a specialization summoner day one in our Western release to main it is going to be a little bit more costly than kickstarting a swiftness summoner. Now, if you get to level 10 gem area, which is not yet the case for the majority here in the West, then specialization needs cheaper gems than swiftness, because we're playing 3 attack gems and the other ones being cooldown ones. But we're not there yet, and you're not gonna kickstart your summoner with 11 level 10 gems anyway. So with what we have so far, gems are sort of similar price if you take level 9s and 8s. Also, not to mention, a specialization build doesn't have sort of any immediate help from your set of gear. Like, for example, you can play swiftness with a charm set. Specialization, you're going to play it with hallucination or salvation. So those 2 sets need your summoner's things to be top notch, so that they can help you out, as opposed to the other way around. So because of that, you're going to have really nice tripods to match your crit rate, to match your cooldowns. You're going to have some pretty decent gems, and obviously the main stat, the specialization, your accessories needs to be high quality as well. If you're planning to main a summoner, even if you're not ready to sort of main it with things put aside beforehand, like gems or tripods or whatnot, then I can definitely recommend that you start off with a specialization build. It's the one that has the higher damage ceiling. It's the one that's still considered by a small margin, but there's still a margin, considered the meta build for the summoner. That being said, let's talk a little bit about the swiftness summoner, which is a very cool alternative to the specialization build. So the swiftness build is a really exciting and fun way of playing your summoner, something that I highly recommend, and something that fares relatively well with the other class engraving, which is the master summoner. The difference is not that big, unlike other classes, for example, which have one very dominant engraving. For the summoner, according to my personal tests, the difference is somewhere around 12, maybe 14%. Other people have tested both class engravings and they got an even shorter difference of about maybe 10% extra damage to the Master Summoner Specialization build compared to the Swiftness build. However, the 10% missing damage is made up in spades by the fun aspect of playing a swiftness pet build, and also the fact that it's definitely easier to play, less stressful than a specialization build. So highly recommend, right? So your summons, this is a summon, Shruti is a summon, Pauru is a summon, and Maririn is also a summon. It's noted there in the tooltip. Shruti is something that you have over your shoulder all the time. The same goes for the Lily. It's a static pet on the ground. However, Pauru and Maririn, they follow you around. To be noted as a extra fact that these summons, they don't have an HP bar, but Maririn does, so he can be killed by things that are happening during a boss fight. Most likely that's not gonna happen because he has a lot of HP, so he's gonna disappear before he actually dies. You have also your Awakening that is an interesting skill that has an active, so eventually you're gonna have sort of a zoo doing the damage for you, and it's a really cool build in general. This and this skill have actives that can be pressed once every couple of seconds, and obviously they do a big chunk of larger amount of damage. So this is why this build is a piano build, simply because if you are actually to maximize on its efficiency, you're gonna understand that there is a lot really to sort of press in terms of buttons, because being efficient means using things of cooldown, and things of cooldown here in a swiftness build, as you can see, there's like literally always something to play. Now I should use this and also maximize my buff here, and now I can use the Maririn skill, summon Pauru again, use the Pauru skill, use the Shatter Earth, then use the Lily. Use the Maririan skill, Pauru skill, again Ancient Spear because it's top priority, Water Spirit, maximize myself, use again this, that, Ancient skill. So it's a lot of spam, but the build is mega fun. The most important things to pay attention to is maximizing on your self buff duration, because as you saw, the pets are out and they are summoned and they do damage for you. So what you need to do now is make sure that you almost always have this particular buff on you. This is a self buff, so that every hit of the pet would actually do a buffed amount of damage. Obviously, the Ancient Spear usage and the Shatter Earth's usage also contributes to damage done. Ancient skills are not really that important, and because they're not that important, it's actually a plus from my personal point of view, since Specialization build uses Akir as a solo ancient skill. In the Swiftness build, nobody's stopping you from using my favorite skill in the game, which is Alimage. So that's another extra bonus for me to actually play this this build, right? Now, having that said, you need very high level cooldown gems on both of your self buffs, and then you need very high level damage gems on almost all of your skills, right? Because of this, the Swiftness build plays a little bit more damage gems than cooldown gems, making the level 10 versions of them more expensive than a Specialization build. With that in mind, the engravings that you play are going to be the Overflowing Sympathy, Adrenaline, Grudge, and Keen Blunt as your 4 base most important engravings, and then you're going to have Raid Captain, for example, as your 5th engraving. You're not stuck with Raid Captain though. You can easily remove this and go for a Cursed Doll, for example, if that makes more sense or is cheaper for you. Strictly connected to the engravings are the accessories and the combat stats. If you're going to play Swiftness on most of your accessories, then these are at the moment the cheapest out of the 3 possibilities that you can find. So this should be relatively affordable to get high quality of them. I would dare to say that the Swiftness Summoner build needs higher quality even than the Specialization build, just so you can reach the thresholds of cooldowns to be very efficient, and also movement speed in case you're planning to play a Raid Captain. A great set of gear to fit this particular build would be the Hallucination set. However, this is not the only way to play a Overflowing Sympathy Summoner. If you're just planning to have it as an alt, then another option would be to use a Charm set and then split the stats differently, as in split them 50-50. Having that said, and now you having experienced sort of both of the summoner builds, the difference in between the builds is really not that high for you to disregard one completely. Getting accepted into groups on your summoner is going to strictly depend here in the West on other things besides what build you're playing. Things such as your item level, your gems, how many engravings you have. I strongly believe that people in the West are not going to criticize a summoner by its build, whether that might be Swiftness or Specialization, simply because the difference is actually just too few to matter. So until my next video on Wednesday, which is going to talk about things that you absolutely need as a priority on your summoner based on the builds you play, so you can maybe get to prepare with these things, assuming you're gonna want a main or alt a summoner. I wish you a lovely day. If I've left any unanswered questions, please let me know in the comments below. I will see you either on my live stream or in my next video here on YouTube. Until then, stay safe and have a great time in Lost Ark.